Have you heard about the shocking revelation from the 2024 MASH documentary that finally exposed what really happened behind the scenes? Before I get into that bombshell, let me tell you something that'll make you want to stick around. One of these beloved actors literally walked away from $3.5 million. Another one's exit was so heartbreaking that even the cast didn't know it was coming until they filmed it. And just 5 months ago, we lost another MASH legend whose death went largely unreported. If you love vintage Hollywood stories and want to know the real truth behind these departures, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're about to uncover secrets that the studios tried to bury for decades. Picture this. It's 1972, the Vietnam War is still raging, America is divided, and CBS debuts a comedy about army surgeons in Korea. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected MASH to become the cultural phenomenon it did. The show would run for 11 seasons, lasting 3 times longer than the actual Korean War, and its finale would become the most watched scripted television episode in history. But here's what most people don't know. Behind those laughs and tears was a revolving door of cast departures that nearly destroyed the show multiple times. Some actors left for glory and found disaster. Others escaped before the pressure crushed them. And the latest tragedy just happened 5 months ago when we lost another beloved cast member in a death that deserved far more attention than it received. Let's start with the most recent heartbreak that somehow flew under the radar. On May 30th, 2025, the television world lost Loretta Swit at age 87. She played Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan for all 11 seasons, making her one of only 4 actors to appear in both the pilot and the finale. But here's what makes her story absolutely remarkable and different from every single one of her male co-stars. While they kept leaving for what they thought were bigger and better opportunities, Swit stayed and literally fought tooth and nail to transform her character from a one-dimensional punchline into one of television's most respected female characters. When MASH began, Margaret Houlihan was written as exactly what her nickname suggested, Hot Lips, a reference to a crude joke from the original film. She was strict, by the book, and often the target of sexist humor. But Loretta Swit refused to let Margaret remain in that degrading box. She once revealed in an interview, "I wanted her to be a woman of substance." And through sheer determination and constant pushing of the writers, she succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Margaret evolved from the rigid head nurse who was constantly ridiculed to a decorated officer, a skilled professional, and ultimately one of the most complex characters on the entire show. Think about this for a moment. Swit was the only woman in the opening credits for most of the show's run, carrying the weight of representing all women in this boys' club of a series. She could have left like the men did, chasing movie roles or other opportunities. Instead, she stayed and made DMN sure her character mattered. After the show ended, Swit became a passionate animal rights activist, running her own charity called Swit Heart Alliance and dedicating her life to helping creatures who couldn't help themselves. Her passing from natural causes marks the end of an era, and the fact that it didn't make major headlines is honestly a tragedy in itself. But Swit's dedication and loyalty stand in stark contrast to the first major departure that absolutely shocked America. McLean Stevenson, who played the lovable, bumbling Colonel Henry Blake, made a decision that would haunt him literally until his dying day. And when you hear the full story, you'll understand why his regret was so profound. You see, McLean had massive dreams that, in retrospect, seem almost delusional. He told People magazine in 1975, and I quote, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show." Now, this might sound egotistical, and honestly, it kind of was, but there was more to it. McLean was watching as Alda's Hawkeye Pierce was becoming not just the star of MASH, but one of the biggest television stars in America. Every week, McLean felt his character sliding further into the background, becoming what he called window dressing for Hawkeye's storylines. But here's what really aided him. McLean had been in Hollywood longer than Alda. He'd paid his dues in television and theater, and now he was watching a younger actor eclipse him completely. The resentment built week after week, season after season. He'd stand on set, delivering his lines, playing the affable commander, all while seething inside that his talents were being wasted. So at the end of season 3, McLean made his move. He marched into the producer's office and announced he was done. The producers tried to convince him to stay. They even offered him more money. But McLean's mind was made up. He was going to be a star on his own terms. What happened next literally changed television history forever and became one of the most talked about moments in entertainment. The episode Abyssinia Henry started like any other farewell episode of its era. Henry Blake gets his discharge papers. The camp throws him a party. There are emotional goodbyes, toasts, and tears. For 25 minutes, viewers thought they were getting a typical, heartwarming sitcom send-off. Henry was going home to his wife and kids in Bloomington, Illinois. He'd made it through the war. Then came that final scene that nobody saw coming. Radar O'Reilly walks into the operating room, his hat in his hand, his face completely grave. The doctors are in the middle of surgery, their hands literally inside wounded soldiers. And then Radar delivers the line that stunned an entire nation. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. The silence that followed could literally be heard across America. No dramatic music swelled, no laugh track played, just the steady beeping of medical equipment and the shocked, devastated faces of the cast. And here's the absolutely incredible part. Most of the cast didn't know this was coming. Only Gary Berghoff, who played Radar, was told in advance so he could prepare for the emotional weight of delivering that line. Alan Alda, Mike Farrell, Loretta Swit, they were all reacting for real. Those tears? Genuine. That shock? Absolutely real. CBS was flooded with thousands of letters. Some praised the show's brutal honesty about war. Others were furious, feeling betrayed and manipulated. One viewer wrote, "You tricked us into caring, and then you ripped our hearts out." Producer Larry Gelbart defended the decision with a simple but powerful statement. "We wanted to say that not everybody gets to go home. That's what war is." McLean Stevenson thought he was heading straight for superstardom. NBC threw money at him, giving him a lucrative deal and his own show, cleverly titled The McLean Stevenson Show. It was canceled after just one season, and not even a full season at that. His next attempt, a sitcom called Hello, Larry, became such a legendary failure that it was literally used as a punchline on other shows. By 1983, a broken McLean admitted to the Los Angeles Times, "I took myself out of the game. I should have stayed where I was." He realized too late that MASH was lightning in a bottle, a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon that he'd walked away from at its peak. The roles dried up, the phone stopped ringing, and McLean spent his final years watching MASH reruns, seeing his character die over and over again in syndication. He passed away in 1996 from a heart attack while recovering from bladder cancer, forever remembered not for what he achieved after MASH, but for what he gave up. Now, here's where things get really wild. Wayne Rogers, who played the mischievous trapper John McIntyre, had an even more dramatic exit, and it involved high-stakes legal drama that could have destroyed his entire career. Rogers felt he'd been promised an equal partnership with Alan Alda when he signed on. The show was sold to him as a two-hander, a buddy comedy about two talented surgeons using humor to survive war. But as the show progressed, Rogers watched himself become what his manager bitterly called the guy who mixes martinis and hands them to Hawkeye. Rogers later revealed, "I had beef from the first day of shooting. I was promised a contract that never materialized. Profits, percentages, billing, money. It was all lip service." But here's the absolutely incredible twist that nobody talks about. Wayne Rogers never actually signed his contract. He'd objected to a morality clause that would let the network fire him for any behavior they deemed immoral or objectionable. Rogers found the language too vague and restrictive, and on principle, he refused to sign. For 3 years, Rogers worked on one of the biggest shows in television without a signed contract. The network kept assuming he'd eventually sign, but but Rogers was playing a longer game. So when he'd finally had enough after season 3, watching his character become increasingly irrelevant while Alda got all the meaty storylines, Rogers simply walked away. No notice, no negotiation, just gone. The studio's response was swift and vicious. They sued him for $3.5 million, an astronomical sum in 1975. They claimed breach of contract, but here was the beautiful irony. There was no signed contract to breach. Rogers won the case completely, walking away free and clear. But unlike McLean's dramatic death scene, Trapper John just vanished. Hawkeye returns from leave to find his best friend has been discharged without even a goodbye. No letter, no phone call, nothing. It's perhaps the saddest departure because there's absolutely no closure. Some say it was Trapper's way of separating his war experience from his life as a family man back home. But the real-world explanation was that Rogers refused to come back even for a farewell episode. Wayne Rogers went on to have moderate success with shows like City of Angels and House Calls, where he proved he could indeed carry a show. But his real triumph came in the most unexpected place: Wall Street. Rogers became so successful in finance that he appeared as an expert witness before Congress in 1990 and became a regular commentator on Fox business programs. He once said, "I made more money in one good year on Wall Street than I made in my entire acting career." Rogers passed away on New Year's Eve 2015 from pneumonia complications. But unlike McLean, he had no regrets. He'd beaten Hollywood at its own game and found success on his own terms. Then there's Larry Linville, who played the insufferable Major Frank Burns, a character that became both a blessing and a curse. By season 5, Larry had a serious problem. While other characters were evolving, showing depth and humanity, Frank remained stuck as a one-note villain. He was the weaselly, incompetent surgeon who was having an affair with Hot Lips while whining about everything and everyone. Larry, a classically trained actor who'd studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London, was growing increasingly frustrated playing such a limited character. Larry later explained, "I'd taken the character as far as he could go. Frank had nowhere to grow." The show was evolving from broad comedy to something more sophisticated, but Frank was trapped in cartoon villainy. So Larry made the mature and professional decision to leave after his 5-year contract expired. Unlike the others, there was no drama, no lawsuits, no bitter feelings. Larry simply recognized it was time to go. The show replaced him with David Ogden Stiers as Charles Emerson Winchester III, a character specifically designed to be everything Frank wasn't. Where Frank was incompetent, Charles was brilliant. Where Frank was petty, Charles was cultured. It was a complete reimagining that elevated the show's dynamic. Larry never found another role as memorable as Frank Burns, but he had no regrets, later joking, "I played a character everyone loved to hate for 5 years. That's not a bad run." But perhaps the most complex departure involved Gary Berghoff, who played the innocent, sweet Radar O'Reilly. He was the only actor to transition from the 1970 movie to the TV show, but his time on set was far from happy. According to the explosive 2024 documentary, MASH, the comedy that changed television, there were serious behind-the-scenes tensions that the public never knew about. Director Charles Dubin revealed for the first time that Berghoff was struggling with severe marriage problems during filming. The long hours and intense shooting schedule were destroying his family life. A 1983 biography by Raymond Straight claimed that Berghoff once got into a screaming match with McLean Stevenson that had to be broken up by crew members. Even more shocking, Wayne Rogers allegedly got so frustrated with Berghoff during one scene that he picked up a chair and threw it across the set. Despite being one of the show's most beloved characters, Berghoff felt perpetually underappreciated. Mike Farrell later admitted, "Gary Berghoff may well have been the best actor in the company, but that recognition came too late. When filming his farewell episode, Goodbye Radar, Berghoff completely broke down. The scene involved Radar talking about a future with a woman he loved, which hit way too close to home given his crumbling marriage. Dubin had to stop filming and walk Berghoff around the studio lot for 15 minutes to help him compose himself. The thing is, Berghoff desperately wanted his final scene to be dramatically emotional. He wanted Radar to completely fall apart, sobbing uncontrollably as he said goodbye to the only family he'd known for years. The director convinced him to hold back, to fight the tears instead. When Berghoff saw the dailies the next day, he admitted he was completely wrong. The subdued, controlled version was infinitely more powerful. His character got a proper send-off in the two-part episode, Goodbye, Radar. Radar's uncle dies, leaving his mother alone to handle the family farm in Iowa. The camp plans an elaborate farewell party, but in typical MASH fashion, helicopters full of wounded arrive just as the party's about to start. Radar's goodbye becomes a series of quick, desperate hugs between surgeries. His final moment is just standing in the doorway of the operating room, watching his friends work, knowing they'll be okay without him. It was tragically perfect. After leaving MASH, Berghoff largely disappeared from Hollywood. CBS desperately tried to give him his own spin-off called Waltier, even filming a pilot, but it never made it to series. Berghoff seemed almost relieved. He became a wildlife painter, invented a fishing lure called Chum Magic, and essentially retired from acting. His marriage ended in divorce shortly after leaving the show, confirming that his instincts about needing to focus on family had come too late. He's still alive at age 82, one of the few surviving original cast members living quietly in Northern California. Now let's talk about the man who replaced Frank Burns, David Ogden Stiers, who brought Major Charles Emerson Winchester III to life. Where Frank was all surface-level incompetence and villainy, Charles had incredible layers. On the outside, he was pompous, cultured, and insufferably arrogant. But underneath, he was a brilliant surgeon deeply affected by the war's brutality. His final scene in the series finale, teaching Chinese prisoners of war to play Mozart only to watch them get killed because of his gift, remains one of the most haunting moments in television history. Stiers stayed until the very end, but when offered the chance to join the spin-off after MASH, he politely declined, saying Winchester had said what he needed to say. What many didn't know was that Stiers was hiding a massive secret throughout his entire career. In 2009, at age 66, he finally came out as gay in an interview with Gossip Boy website. He explained he'd hidden his sexuality for decades out of fear it would destroy his career, especially his lucrative voice work for Disney, where he'd voiced characters in Beauty and the Beast, Pocahontas, and Lilo and Stitch. "I am gay, very proud to be so," he said, but admitted the decision to hide it had been agonizing. In Hollywood during the 70s and 80s, being openly gay was often career suicide. Stiers passed away in 2018 from bladder cancer at age 75, remembered not just for his incredible range as an actor, but for the quiet courage it took to finally live his truth, even if it came late in life. There's also the mysterious case of George Morgan, the very first MASH departure that nobody talks about. Morgan played Father Mulcahy in the pilot episode, but was replaced by William Christopher when the series went to production. Executive producer Larry Gelbart later admitted, "George Morgan is a perfectly fine actor. We wanted someone who had a quirkier personality." Morgan never had significant roles after his MASH exit. His career essentially ended before it began, making him the forgotten casualty of the show's early days. The story of MASH is really a story about the brutal cost of success in Hollywood. Some actors left chasing dreams that turned into nightmares. Others departed because they'd said all they needed to say. Some stayed and fought to make their characters matter. And through it all, the show kept reinventing itself, turning cast departures into creative opportunities that actually made it stronger. What makes these exits even more poignant is what we've learned in recent years. The 2024 documentary revealed tensions and struggles the public never knew about. The fights, the tears, the lawsuits, the regrets. The recent loss of Loretta Swit reminds us that these weren't just characters on our TV screens. They were real people dealing with incredible pressure in an industry that could build you up or tear you down without warning. MASH ran for 256 episodes across 11 years. It won 14 Emmy Awards out of over 100 nominations. Its finale on February 28, 1983, drew 121.6 million viewers, a record that still stands for scripted television. But behind those staggering numbers were human stories of ambition, frustration, triumph, and devastating regret. The actors who left MASH chasing stardom mostly found disappointment. McLean Stevenson's shows flopped. Wayne Rogers found success, but not in acting. Larry Linville never escaped Frank Burns' shadow. Gary Berghoff retreated from the spotlight entirely. Meanwhile, those who stayed, Alan Alda, Loretta Swit, Jamie Farr, William Christopher, became television immortals. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from vintage Hollywood and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest revelations. These actors gave us laughter through tears, and their sacrifices created something that will live forever in television history. What's your favorite MASH moment? Which departure shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below, because your stories matter too.